As we grow older, something curious begins to happen. Something many of us don't even notice at first. We start to treasure peace over noise, seek clarity instead of getting swept up in chaos, and crave sincerity more than the bonds of blood. But there's a truth few dare to speak out loud. Sometimes, the most dangerous people in your later years are the ones you've known the longest, even your own family. Now, let me start with the very first type of person you absolutely must steer clear of as you step into the golden chapter of your life: the guilt tripper. And I ask you to listen with your heart wide open, because this type often comes wrapped in the disguise of love. It sounds like care. It wears the familiar face of family. But guilt, when used as a tool for manipulation, is poison, pure and simple. The most chilling part? Guilt trippers don't need to raise their voice. They don't yell. They whisper. They sigh. They wield silence like a weapon. Say no just once, and suddenly you're painted as ungrateful, selfish, or worse, heartless. All because you dared to draw a boundary. All because you said, "I can't do this anymore," or "I need some time for myself." If you're not careful, your golden years could turn into an endless string of apologies, simply for existing. They will make you feel like you owe them something just for growing older, as if your very breath has become a burden. It's subtle, but devastating. Sometimes it slips out in offhand remarks like, "I guess I'll just figure it out myself since you're too busy," or "I once took care of you, and now look at how you treat me." Listen carefully. This is important. Your life is not a debt you owe to anyone. Not your children. Not your siblings. Not even the lifelong friends you cherish. You don't owe anyone your peace. You don't owe them your health. And you certainly don't owe them the precious energy you have left just to make them feel powerful, in control, or morally superior. That's not love. That's manipulation, wearing the mask of emotional currency. The older you get, the clearer it becomes. Time is your most sacred currency, and guilt trippers, they are professional thieves of your time. They will drag you into draining conversations, push you into exhausting obligations, and trap you in relationships that chip away at your self-worth. You'll hear things like, "If you really loved me, you would do this." But take a moment and think. Love is not proven through exhaustion. Love is not measured by how much of yourself you abandon. You don't prove love by shrinking yourself smaller and smaller. You prove love by living in your truth. And here's something even more dangerous. Guilt trippers are masters at making you question your own reality. You'll find yourself wondering, am I really being selfish? Am I not doing enough? That self-doubt is exactly how they keep you tied to their emotional leash. But true freedom begins the moment you recognize that emotional manipulation is... You remember how we talked about guilt trippers? Those who quietly steal your peace under the disguise of love. Well, there's a deeper layer to this truth we need to uncover. See, emotional manipulation is just another form of control. And at this stage of life, you don't have time or energy to be controlled anymore. What you need now is space. Space to breathe deeply, to heal old wounds, to reflect on your journey, and most importantly, to live fully. Think about it. You've spent decades showing up for others, raising children, supporting family, giving your all at work, standing strong for everyone else. You poured your heart, your strength, and sometimes even your dreams into making life better for those around you. Now, it's time to reclaim what's left of your precious energy. For you, not to become cold, not to grow bitter, but to finally taste true freedom. I know for some, especially those raised in cultures where family is everything, this can sound harsh. It can feel almost wrong. But hear me out. I'm not telling you to cut ties with people just because they're difficult or imperfect. I'm saying, protect yourself from those who use guilt as a leash to tether you. That's different. That's not love. That's manipulation dressed up as obligation. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself, and even for them, is to disappoint the unhealthy expectations they tried to place on you. Because here's a truth that many people are too afraid to say out loud. Just because someone is your family doesn't mean they are healthy for your spirit. Let me repeat that for the ones in the back. Just because someone shares your blood doesn't mean they nourish your soul. At this season of your life, you are not responsible for fixing everyone's problems. You are not obligated to hold the entire family together, especially when it comes at the expense of your mental, emotional, and even physical health. You are not here to play referee, therapist, or emotional punching bag. You are here to live, finally, truly, and unapologetically. And let me tell you something else. You do not need to explain your boundaries to those who were never going to respect them in the first place. You do not need to justify your peace to anyone. You just need to claim it, fiercely and without shame. You have earned your peace. You earned it through the storms you survived, the heartbreaks you endured, the silent sacrifices you made when no one was watching. You earned it through the nights you gave everything when you had nothing left. You earned it with your life. Please, don't trade it away for guilt. If someone truly loves you, they will want you to be at peace, not compliant. Real love doesn't demand. It respects. It honors. It creates room for you to be exactly who you are. It doesn't use guilt to silence you or bend you into submission. So as you continue on this journey, stay alert for guilt trippers. They may come with warm smiles and kind words, but if you find your spirit heavier every time they leave, listen to that feeling. Your soul knows when it's being weighed down, and if you ever need permission to say no, let me give it to you now. Saying no to them is saying yes to yourself. And that, my friend, is a trade worth making. Every single time. Now, speaking of energy, there's another kind of person you need to be cautious around. They're the ones who never seem satisfied, no matter how much life gives them. The ones I like to call the energy vampires. Earlier, we talked about how important it is to protect your peace, especially from those who carry around constant negativity. Now, let's take a closer look at exactly how their invisible weight can creep into your life. Sometimes, it only takes a single phone call, one unexpected visit, one conversation you didn't even see coming, and just like that, your entire day feels heavier. You feel irritated, anxious, uneasy, and the worst part? You can't even quite explain why. That's the sneaky way it works. They show up, they offload all their emotional burdens onto you, and then they leave, lighter, relieved, while you're left standing there, weighed down by bags you never even packed. And let me say this clearly, without any sugarcoating. You were not put on this earth to be someone's emotional landfill. You were not created to absorb everyone's darkness while sacrificing your own light. That was never your purpose, and especially now, at this stage of your life, it's more important than ever to remember that. I understand. Some of these people might be incredibly close to you. Maybe it's someone you've known for decades, a sibling, a best friend, a longtime neighbor, or even, and this is the hardest, one of your own children. That emotional tie makes it feel impossible to step back, doesn't it? But hear this and let it sink in. Just because someone has been a part of your life story doesn't mean they get to write your ending. If a person consistently drains your spirit, if their presence brings only complaints, criticisms, and chaos, then it's not just okay to create distance. It's necessary for your health, for your joy, for your future. You're not stepping away out of anger. You're stepping away out of self-respect, out of the deep understanding that your emotional well-being matters, and you no longer have the time, energy, or desire to pour yourself out for people who only know how to take and never give. Have you ever noticed how, after talking to certain people, you feel smaller? Like the room you were standing tall in just a moment ago suddenly shrank around you. Your hope dims, your clarity blurs, your heart, once steady, starts to second-guess itself. That's not just a bad mood, that's the erosion of your peace happening right before your eyes, one tiny crack at a time, and trust me, it builds up, it adds up, and over time, it changes you. There are people who have lived so long in complaint mode that they don't even realize they're doing it anymore. Their entire identity revolves around what's wrong, what's missing, who failed them. And if you stay too close for too long, they'll slowly start teaching you to see life the same way, through their bitter, broken lens. That's the real danger. They don't just drain your energy, they reshape your entire perspective. Little by little, you start carrying their bitterness like a coat that doesn't even belong to you. But you deserve so much better. You deserve to be surrounded by people who lift you higher, who challenge you with kindness, who speak life, not just loss, into your soul. People who remind you, even when the world feels messy, that there's still beauty to be found. And if you look around and realize you don't have those kinds of people yet, maybe it's time to tighten your circle. Here's something that most won't tell you. Peace is louder than noise. It doesn't scream for attention. It doesn't beg to be noticed. But when it's missing, oh, you feel it. In your body, in your mind, and deep in your spirit. Protecting your peace means protecting your energy. And protecting your energy sometimes requires stepping back from those who treat your presence like a dumping ground for their dysfunction. You are not obligated to answer every call. You are not obligated to sit through every complaint session. You are not responsible for carrying burdens that were never meant to be yours. It is not unkind to protect your space. It is not cruel to protect your heart. It is not selfish to protect your light. After learning how vital it is to guard your energy and protect your peace, there's another essential truth we need to face. Sometimes, protecting your peace means learning how and when to say no, even to people you care about. It is not rude to say, "I love you, but I can't carry this with you today." That's not cruelty. That's not selfishness. That's wisdom. That's maturity. That's self-preservation. There comes a point in your life, and maybe you're feeling it now, where you have to stop apologizing for choosing your peace. You have to stop explaining why you'd rather sit quietly in your own stillness than get pulled into someone else's chaos. You have to stop feeling guilty for refusing to jump into endless cycles of complaints, criticism, and negativity. Because the truth is, you've outgrown that noise. And believe me, that growth is something to be proud of. You are stepping into a season where your main focus should be on healing, reflecting, and enjoying the precious moments you have ahead. Not wasting them tangled up in someone else's storms, someone else's endless drama, or someone else's never-ending misery. You've carried enough burdens for others, you've sacrificed enough dreams, enough time, enough heartbeats. Now, your energy must be guarded like the priceless treasure it truly is. So the next time the constant complainers come knocking at your door, or the critics try to pull you back into their swirling storm of negativity, remember this: you have the right and the responsibility to protect your peace. And now, let's move into something that cuts even deeper. Because what we're about to talk about, well, it hits close to home for a lot of us. It's about the people who only show up when they need something. The users, the ones who treat your relationship like a convenience store, a quick stop when they're running low. They don't come just to sit with you. They don't come to ask how your heart is doing. They come to grab what they need, your time, your attention, your energy. And then they vanish the second their tank is full. Let me be clear. This isn't about being unwilling to help people you love. This is about recognizing when help has become a one-way street, when love has quietly turned into a transaction, when your worth in their eyes seems to exist only when you are useful. You've seen it before, haven't you? Maybe it's the friend who only calls when their car breaks down. Maybe it's a family member who only shows up when rent is due. Maybe it's someone who pops back into your life just long enough to borrow money, borrow time, or borrow peace, and then disappears again without so much as a thank you, or even a simple, "How are you?" And because you're kind, because you have a heart that always wants to believe the best in people, you give them the benefit of the doubt. You remember the good times. You hold on to who they used to be. You hope deep down that one day they'll show up simply because they love you, not because they need something from you. But here's what life, if you're paying close enough attention, will eventually teach you. Some people never show up unless there's something in it for them. And that kind of relationship, no matter how long it has lasted or how many memories you share, is not love. It's dependence. It's convenience. And if you don't learn how to say no, it will leave you emotionally bankrupt. One of the hardest, but most freeing lessons as you grow older is realizing this truth. Being needed is not the same as being loved. Let me say that again. Being needed is not the same as being loved. Some people only keep you close because you make their life easier, not because they cherish who you are. Earlier, we talked about the painful realization that being needed is not the same as being loved. Now, let's dig deeper into how these patterns quietly drain you, and why choosing yourself is not selfish, it's survival. You see, the real reason they keep coming back isn't just because you say yes. It's because they know your heart. They know your heart is big, generous, and your defenses are soft. And every time they show up, they don't just ask for money or time or favors. No, they take something far more valuable. They take your presence. They take your peace. They take your patience. And when they leave, they don't just leave with what they came for. They leave you emptier than you were before they arrived. And don't they always have a good story too? A convincing reason, an excuse that tugs at your heart, a promise that this time will be different. And for a moment, just for a moment, you want to believe them. You want to believe they've changed. You want to believe they came back because they care, not because they're desperate. But then, it happens again. You give, they take. Their problem is solved, and just like a passing storm, they vanish, leaving you with the aftermath. What's truly dangerous is that this kind of relationship doesn't break you all at once. It's not an earthquake. It's erosion. Slow, steady, and almost invisible if you're not paying attention. Little by little, you start feeling guilty for needing space. You start questioning yourself every time you try to set a boundary. You wonder, am I being too harsh, too cold? But deep down in the quiet parts of yourself, you know the truth. You're being used, and it hurts more than words can say. There's a particular kind of silence that settles in after someone has gotten what they wanted from you. A hollow silence that echoes louder than any words ever could. And if you listen closely to that silence, it teaches you something powerful. You deserve better. You deserve more than being someone's emergency contact. You deserve more than being someone's emotional ATM. You deserve people who pour back into you, not just when it's convenient, but consistently, with presence, with love, with truth. And yes, I know, letting go is hard. It's hard to say no to people you once cradled in your arms. It's hard to pull away from those you've prayed for through sleepless nights, shared meals with, celebrated milestones with. But you have to ask yourself, what is this relationship costing me? Not just financially, but emotionally, spiritually. Am I left drained after every encounter? Am I respected, truly respected, or merely tolerated until I'm needed again? Am I being seen or just used? And don't be surprised. Don't be shaken when the very same people who depended on you start calling you selfish the moment you stop being available on demand. That's their tactic. That's how they keep the cycle alive. Because as long as they can make you feel guilty, they can keep pulling from you. But the moment you choose peace over performance, the moment you refuse to be at their beck and call, that's when they reveal who they really are. And when that moment comes, let it come. Let them walk. Let them get angry. Let them twist the story if they need to. But you stay rooted, because deep down, you know the unshakable truth. You were not made to be used. You were made to be loved. In this season of life, you don't need people who keep score. You don't need people who remember you only when they're sinking. You need people who remember you in the sunlight, in the stillness, in the beautifully ordinary days. People who come not for what you can give, but simply for who you are. You have given enough across a lifetime. Now it's time to receive, not just respect, but real, mutual care. And that powerful shift, it begins the moment you refuse to be anyone's emotional vending machine. Previously, we talked about the painful truth of relationships that only exist when you're useful. Now, let's take it one step further. Because sometimes, it's not just the users you need to watch for, it's the ones who try to control you, often under the kind disguise of care. When people come knocking only when they need something, when they show up with a handout, but never a hand to hold, remember this: if their love disappears, the moment your resources run out, it was never love to begin with. Now, let's shift to another group, a group that can be even harder to recognize at first. But once you see it clearly, everything will start to make perfect sense. I'm talking about the controllers. These are the people who, no matter how old you are, no matter how much life you've lived, still act like you can't be trusted to make your own decisions. They don't always yell. They don't always demand. Sometimes they even sound like they're helping, offering advice laced with concern. But underneath their carefully chosen words is one simple desire: control. And I need you to hear this loud and clear. You do not need to be managed. You need to be respected. One of the most subtle and most suffocating forms of emotional control is when someone constantly questions your choices, undermines your judgment, or tries to quietly steer your life under the banner of, "I'm just trying to help." But what they're really doing is robbing you of your dignity, robbing you of your voice, robbing you of the freedom you have more than earned. Controllers come in many shapes. Some are easy to spot. They're loud, insistent, always pushing you toward their way of thinking, feeling, or acting. But others are much quieter. They try to help by making every decision for you, not because they believe you. Are incapable, but because they fear your independence. Your independence threatens their sense of control. So they slip advice into every conversation, offer opinions you never asked for, and apply pressure that makes you question the wisdom you already knew deep down in your gut. You know the type, don't you? You say you want to take a trip somewhere new, and they tell you it's too dangerous at your age. You think about downsizing your home, and they insist you're not thinking clearly. You decide to give something away, and they immediately say, "Don't do that. What if you need it later?" It's a constant low-grade hum of doubt, carefully disguised as care. But let's be honest, it's not care, it's control. And that kind of control, left unchecked, can leave you feeling like a guest in your own life, like a child needing permission for every move you make. But here's the truth. Age does not erase your ability to make decisions. If anything, it sharpens it. You've lived through wars, recessions, heartbreaks, victories, losses, rebirths, and all the everyday miracles that weave the fabric of a life fully lived. You've earned the right to stand tall and say, "I know what I want, and I trust myself to choose it." Anyone who tries to take that away from you, even if they claim it's out of love, isn't helping you. They're handling you. And you, my friend, are not someone who needs to be handled. What makes this even harder is that sometimes the controllers are people who genuinely love you. A protective child, a fearful spouse, a well-meaning friend. And because their voices are so familiar, you start listening. You start second-guessing. You start shrinking your dreams to fit inside their fears. Little by little, your life becomes smaller. Not because you wanted less, but because someone else decided you couldn't handle more. But hear me, and hold this deep in your spirit. It is not your job to live a life that makes other people comfortable. It is your calling to live a life that feels right in your own soul. And if that means disappointing those who think they know better, so be it. Your truth is not up for debate. Your freedom is not something you have to earn all over again. You have already paid for it with your years, your wisdom, your sacrifices, and your strength. Don't ever let anyone confuse your need for support with a need for supervision. Earlier, we talked about the importance of reclaiming your voice and not letting anyone manage your life under the disguise of help. Now, let's go even deeper, because protecting your freedom also means surrounding yourself with people who truly respect your independence. Yes, it's true. We all need help sometimes. That's part of being human. But needing help does not mean you hand over the keys to your entire life. It means you invite someone in as a partner, not as a warden. Controllers or patrollers often act offended when you start pushing back. You'll hear lines like, "I'm just trying to look out for you," said with a sigh or a wounded look. But here's the thing. There's a massive difference between looking out for someone and trying to control them. One comes from love. The other comes from fear. And let me remind you, you have lived far too much life, walked through far too many fires, to let someone else's fear dictate your next steps. You deserve to be surrounded by people who trust your voice, who celebrate your choices, who believe deeply in your ability to lead your own beautiful, messy, extraordinary life. Because let's be honest, if they haven't learned to trust you by now after everything you've lived through, what more could you possibly need to prove? You don't need anyone to co-sign your life anymore. You don't need endless permission slips to follow your own spirit. You just need people who will walk alongside you, not over you. And yes, for many of us, this realization means having some very hard conversations. It might mean saying, "I love you, but this decision is mine to make." It might mean choosing to be respected, even if it means being misunderstood. It might mean giving up the comfort of approval for the deeper reward of self-trust. That takes courage, a rare kind of courage, but it's the kind of courage that sets you free. So, if there's someone in your life right now who's trying to squeeze you into a box, if they're parenting you when what you need is partnership, if they're making you feel like your dreams are foolish or your plans are out of reach, stand tall, hold your ground, because this life, every wild, beautiful second of it, is still yours to live. And speaking of living your own life, there's one more kind of person you must be especially mindful of during this season: the ones who refuse to grow. You know the ones I'm talking about. They wear the years on their face, but not in their spirit. They have survived many things, but somewhere along the way, they stopped evolving. When you're around them, it feels like being caught in a strong undertow, pulling you backward when all you want is to move forward. Their world is small, their thinking is fixed, their hearts are closed tight like a fist. And if you're not careful, if you linger too long, they'll trap you in that same shrinking space. These are the folks who gossip endlessly about others, but never take a moment for honest self-reflection. The ones who talk loudly about everything wrong with the world, but never stop to ask, what do I need to change? They act like they have all the answers, but deep down, they're terrified of true transformation. Let me tell you something powerful. Growth doesn't stop just because your hair turns grey. In fact, as you grow older, spiritual growth becomes even more important. Because this chapter of your life isn't just about looking back on memories. It's about preparing for something deeper: peace, clarity, legacy. But you cannot step into that freedom if you're still tethered to people who refuse to evolve. People who are still bitter over things that happened decades ago. People still carrying old grudges like trophies, when in reality, They're just anchors weighing them and you down. If you let them, they'll keep pulling you into pointless conversations, arguments that go nowhere, mindsets that shrink your spirit. And the truth is, it's not your job to carry them forward if they choose to stay stuck. I know it sounds harsh, but listen closely. Your soul was never meant to be trapped in someone else's emotional immaturity. Just because you share history with someone doesn't mean you owe them your future. There will be people who look at you with disbelief, even with resentment, and say, "You've changed." And you know what? That's one of the greatest compliments you could ever receive. Because if you're not changing, you're not growing. And if you're not growing, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, you're slowly dying inside. People who are stuck won't want to see you evolve. Your growth threatens their comfort. Your peace exposes their restlessness. Your healing reminds them of the work they've avoided for years. And sometimes, the hardest people to walk away from are the ones you've known the longest. Not because they're good for your soul, but because their presence has simply become familiar. In the last part, we talked about how familiarity alone isn't enough to justify staying trapped with people who refuse to grow. Now, let's take that understanding even deeper, because real freedom means knowing when it's time to let go, even when it hurts. Some people have simply become routine in your life, but familiarity is not a reason to stay stuck. You can still love someone and love them deeply while loving them from a distance. You can honor the history you share without dragging the heavy weight of it behind you everywhere you go. I've seen it over and over again. Elders, wise in years, full of memories, but stagnant in spirit. They can tell you what happened, every detail, every twist, but not what it meant. They can list out their regrets like a ledger, but when you ask what they've learned from it all, there's only silence. That, my friend, is not wisdom. That's just memory. And memory without meaning. It's like running in circles, familiar, but going absolutely nowhere. And I know, you didn't come this far just to keep spinning in place. You didn't survive all you've survived just to stay stuck. You came this far to find peace, to find rest, to pass on more than just stories. You came to pass on truth. But hear me, you cannot carry truth forward if you're still dragging along the weight of people who refuse to reflect, who refuse to heal, who refuse to let go of their chaos. Because when you carry their unresolved pain, their bitterness, their endless drama, their chaos slowly becomes your burden. Their pain slowly becomes your prison. And before you know it, you find yourself watering dead plants, pouring your energy into people and places where growth was never going to happen. Let me say something that might be difficult, but is absolutely necessary. Some people are not interested in becoming better. They are only interested in being right. And you could waste the very best of your final years trying to convince them to change, trying to offer healing to hearts that aren't ready to receive it. But hear this loud and clear. That is not your assignment. Your job is not to drag grown adults through the emotional work they are unwilling to do. Your job is to walk in peace. Your job is to keep growing. Your job is to surround yourself with others who are committed to doing the same. Find people who are curious, not just opinionated. Find people who are open, not just loud. Find people who are seeking healing, not rehearsing pain over and over again. And when you find those people, you'll feel it. You'll notice something inside you start to shift. You'll feel lighter, clearer, more alive, because growth creates space. And being around those who refuse to grow, that suffocates your spirit. You deserve relationships that feel like fresh air, not heavy, choking fog. You deserve people who challenge you with love, not chain you with fear. And if that means shrinking your circle to just a handful of souls who get it, so be it. Because a small circle filled with truth, healing, and life is infinitely better than a big crowd full of noise, drama, and numbness. So when you find yourself surrounded by people who haven't moved an inch in spirit or heart, people still clinging to old bitterness, people still stuck in conversations from 20 years ago, remember, it's okay to lovingly step away. And speaking of protecting your spirit, there's one more kind of person you must be even more mindful of, especially now in this sacred season of life. It's the ones who mock faith, the ones who belittle the very foundation that carried you through life's darkest storms, those who roll their eyes when you speak about God, those who treat your convictions like childish fantasies. And no, I'm not talking about people who simply believe differently. I'm talking about those who actively disrespect your faith, those who take pleasure in tearing down the very thing your soul has been anchored to. Let's be clear. Faith is not weakness. Faith is strength. Faith is why you're still standing. It's the reason you survived pain that should have broken you. It's the reason you kept walking when the world around you fell apart. Faith is what whispered, "Keep going," when you had every reason to quit. And anyone who mocks that, anyone who treats that sacred foundation like a joke, they don't deserve a front row seat in your life, especially now. Because as you reach this season of deeper reflection, when questions about purpose and eternity grow heavier, you need people who speak life into your soul, not mockery. People who may not walk the exact same path, but who respect it nonetheless. But sadly, some hearts are so hardened by cynicism that all they know how to do is scoff. In the last part, we explored how important it is to protect your faith from those who mock or belittle it. Now let's continue, because guarding your spirit is just as vital as guarding your peace. You see, some people mock what they don't understand. They'll make you feel silly for praying. They'll try to make you feel small for believing in something greater than yourself. They'll scoff at the very thing that has been your anchor through every storm. And if you let them get too close, their doubt starts to seep into your spirit. Not because they're right, but simply because their voices are loud, persistent, and constant. Don't let it happen. Don't let their sarcasm shrink your faith. Don't let their jokes plant seeds of shame in the sacred soil of your soul. Because here's the truth. Faith is not fragile. Faith is fire. It's the fire that's kept you alive through heartbreaks, disappointments, losses you thought you'd never survive. It's what held your family together when everything else fell apart. It's what healed your heart when the world left it broken. Faith doesn't make you naive. Faith makes you grounded. Faith makes you wise. And anyone who can't see that, well, maybe it's because they're not looking through the right eyes. Sometimes the ones who mock your faith aren't strangers. They're close, a lifelong friend who grew bitter with time, a family member whose heart hardened through the years, maybe even one of your own children, now thinking they're too smart to believe in what they call old stories. And you love them. Of course, you do. You always will. But loving someone doesn't mean you have to let them dishonor the sacred foundation that holds you together. This isn't about arguing. It's not about trying to convert anyone. It's not about forcing anyone to see what you see. It's about protecting the soil of your soul. Because whatever peace you have inside you today, you fought for that. You bled for that. You cried through sleepless nights for that. And you don't owe anyone an explanation for why you believe, who you pray to, or where you find your hope in the dark. You know what's real. You know what you've been through. You know the moments when God carried you when no one else could. You heard his voice when the noise of the world faded. You saw his grace show up in the very moments you felt least deserving of it. And listen, I don't care how educated someone is, how successful they seem, or how enlightened they claim to be. If they haven't walked through your valleys, if they haven't carried your crosses, then they have no right to laugh at your light. Sometimes you have to love people from a distance, for the sake of your soul. You can still pray for them. You can still bless them with your kindness. but you don't have to invite them into the sacred spaces of your spirit where they only come to tear down and not to build. Because that's not love. That's spiritual warfare disguised as casual conversation. And let me tell you something else. It's not always about what they say out loud. It's the energy they carry, the smirks, the rolling of eyes, the passive-aggressive comments that chip away at your peace little by little, like a slow drip wearing down stone. But you deserve better than that. You deserve to be surrounded by people who honor your walk, even if they don't walk the same path. People who sit quietly with you in your truth, not poke holes in it for sport or ego. Because when all is said and done, we are all going to leave this world, every single one of us. And in those final moments, it won't be about how many debates we won. It will be about how much peace we carried, how deeply we loved, how firmly we believed in something greater than ourselves. I want you to have peace when you lay your head down at night. Not because your life was perfect, but because your soul was anchored in something real, something eternal. Because you didn't let mockery steal your reverence. Because you held on to your faith, even when others laughed, doubted, or walked away. So when those who mock your beliefs come around, whether with loud sarcasm or with subtle silence, remember this. You don't need their agreement to stay close to God. You just need the courage to guard your faith like the priceless treasure it is.